Says it's working. There we go. Hello and welcome everybody to JVology show number 69. And I know that sounds weird because we did show number 72 just a couple days ago. However, me and my dear friend Kathleen had a couple of technical difficulties. A few days of the title and name and all of those pieces. So welcome, Kathleen. Thank you so much for being here with. How are you?
Oh, I am doing well, Jay. Thanks for your patience with all the technical know-how and whatever that went on Tuesdays.
Well, you know what? It is a ongoing bit of trying to get all of those pieces to work all of the time, and frankly, it just simply doesn't. Is the truth. So
yeah.
Over the span of years we've been doing this, and literally, as I said, my sound moved away from my headphones to a different device, so I'm just going to fix it momentarily here. I've just come to surrender to the reality of how those things go. We make the best of it, and away we go. Now, just before we dive in, and Kathleen is going to share with you a whole variety of tips, tools, and ideas related to leadership, particularly in the faith space. I want to give a little rundown for people who perhaps don't see the show, all the rest of it. So, as I said before, my name is Jay Fazette. I am the founder of JVology, the perfect mix of people, fun, and profit. And that is an organization that is a community and training organization that helps entrepreneurs in every way, shape, or form. So that could be digital entrepreneurs, that could be coaches, authors, experts, entrepreneurs, that could be retail locations. Reposition their business models so that they get, I got to remember to always have the mic close, that they get a steady stream of perfectly qualified free leads at the front end of their business through joint ventures and consistent recurring passive income at the back end of their business, again, through joint ventures, by collaborating with other like-minded, a similar tribe. And our whole view to it is this: is we just want to simply help our clients solve their problems better, more effectively, and more efficiently. So we do that in lots of different ways. This show is one of them, where we feature cool community members like Kathleen with the rest of the world. We do it in our live events coming up in September. I'll put a link in the chat a little bit later. We do a monthly membership program called the Global Lounge, where entrepreneurs from all over the world come together and share joint venture opportunities and training. And we do consulting and one and a whole variety of other things. But that's us. That's not really the reason why we are here today. Why we're here today is to focus on Kathleen. She has a mini course. She has just readapted from a book form to online digital form, which I'm totally excited to hear about. But there's a couple of mechanical details. Mechanical detail number one is this: we share these shows all over God's green earth on Facebook and those sorts of things. And if you page us not the original broadcast page, we can't see your comments. So one of the things you should do is click on the video or click on my name just above the video, Jay Fazette. It will take you over to the broadcast page where you can make comments. We can see it. You can ask Kathleen and I questions. We can respond. That would be fantastic. And then I think the very last thing to do before we actually get the show up and running is for us to play our little ARG. Kathleen, you and I have, I don't know what we want to call it, not use it, AirPlay off, because I just lost my little screen. So I just need to go AirPlay off. Don't look for the TV, just leave it be. Okay. We're going to try this one last time. Keep your fingers crossed. Hopefully you come back. Am I going to see you? Please.
I hope. I'm here.
Is that my camera's over there and the screen where I can see you is over here. So I'm going to end up doing a little bit of this particular show, but I will do my darndest. Okay, so I'm going to play our little video, and then we are going to dive on in.
Great.
There we go. Okay, preamble done. Kathleen, welcome, and thank you for being here. I appreciate your patience.
Thank you, Jay, also for your patience. It's one of those days, I guess, where and weeks where technology gets to be an interesting ride, shall we say.
Yes, well, I think an interesting ride for very interesting times in our life and in our world.
Kidding.
So why don't we start, Kathleen, by if you could give the community and our viewers like the 5,000-foot view of you, a snapshot of your past and who you serve today, and paint us the picture, please.
A picture. Well, I am a pastor, retired now, but I'll give you the quick story of kind of where I've been and where I am. I started in ministry serving some small congregations and a much larger one for 12 years. And then one day I got given the choice of either resign or be fired. Not exactly the choice I was looking for by any means. I was devastated. I felt like an absolute failure. That I had failed God, I had failed my ministry, I had failed my family, I had failed myself. But I also felt like the church had failed me by not really teaching me how to be a good leader. And I sought out some mentors. Some of them were within my faith community, and others were outside of my own faith. And through working with them, I began to develop some leadership skills and went on to continue in ministry, which I had been about ready to quit. But I continued in ministry and went on to serve in a team ministry with my husband, who is also a pastor. And then during that time, I also mentored 14 seminary students and then retired when I was ready. And now work with other faith leaders within my denomination and actually in any faith whatsoever, and especially women in ministry, and learning to develop some other leadership skills, some of the things I've learned over the years, as well as just working together on what does it mean to be in ministry today? So we work on strategic leadership for innovative ministry, tackling the challenges of today.
Well, and I mean, let's be clear. That is, I'm not in there, but I putting task when articles that I read that congregations continue to shrink. That's the churches are closing. Like I know in my small towns in Saskatchewan, there used to be a church in every town, and now quite literally people have to drive a half hour, an hour to get to a place where there's a live community. So that's got to be a challenging arena. One of the things I didn't know, Kathleen, is that you and your husband actually worked together in that process. I knew that you were both pastors, but I didn't know that you actually worked together. As somebody who has worked with my wife, I'm curious, how'd that go?
Well, mostly pretty good. There were, of course, times and challenges, but we're very different people. And so where he has some strengths, they may be gaps that I don't have. And where I have some strengths, that's not exactly his cup of tea, so to speak. And so in many ways, it was a really good model for the congregation. He was the more full-time, I was part-time in that, but our styles of preaching and leadership and everything were really quite different. So they got to see two people working together. We disagreed sometimes with the church board, and I mean in front of some people in the church board and things, and how we could work that out became more of a healthy model to show people that you can disagree without being disagreeable and to work things out. And so it worked mostly.
I think my wife and I would say the same thing. It worked mostly, except for those times when it didn't. And I just think that it's a very powerful process to share. Now, one of the things that I really love and admire about you is your commitment to serving faith leaders of any denomination. I think it's becoming more common, but it is still a little bit on the unusual side. Can I ask just like how you came to the grounding or the view that is like, look, this is an important role regardless of what the specific faith is. leaders of faiths need supports. How did you come to that? Because it's one of the things I've always admired about you.
Well, part of that happened kind of as a result of leaving without wanting to leave that one congregation, without being ready to do that. And during that time, between when I left there and when I got into a new parish and everything, it was a couple of years in there, and it was a real journey. And part of that journey was, as I said, with people, individuals, and some mentors of other faiths. And part of it, I got to see some of the richness of other belief systems and learned some things about my own belief systems and how more about not being judgmental, but seeing, as I put it, the grace of God and the gift of God in everybody. And because of the good experiences I have had with people outside of my particular denomination and even outside my faith group, it's really opened me up to that. And then I've seen so much divisiveness in our world today and the pain that causes, and the problems it causes, not just pain, but the other kinds of problems it causes. And I know that it doesn't have to be that way. And actually, I go back to something, it's a story that I've told on a couple of occasions from my childhood growing up by my grandparents. The street where my grandparents used to live on was lined by the same kind of trees on both sides of the street when I was a kid. And they had a beautiful way of growing, and they arched up and met in the middle. And it looked, I didn't know it at the time, but it was kind of like a Gothic archway that you drove through. And I grew up in a northern climate. And so in wintertime, the leaves were off. But even when it was bare branches or had snow on them, it was gorgeous. It was absolutely gorgeous. But then after I moved away and in my seminary training, I wasn't able to visit my grandparents very often. But one time I was home and in the car with my parents going to visit, and I noticed in one of the streets, not as we approached my grandparents, looked down the street, it had the same sorts of trees on it, and some of the trees were gone. And I commented and was told that there was a disease that was getting into the trees. And the city was doing everything they could to try and stop the disease, but it was being spread by a beetle. And because the branches touched over a street and from tree to tree on the same side, it was a real challenge. So it was like maybe 6 months to more than that before I got to see my grandparents again. And I started looking down that side street before we got to Grandma and Grandpa's, and every single tree was gone. And the reason was, the beauty of that, of all of those trees being the same. The city had found out that the only way to get rid of the disease of the beetles was to cut down all of those trees throughout the whole city. And it was a shock and a bit of grief to see that happen. And I learned that the diversity is so important. There's a beauty in that sameness, but there's also a weakness there. And there's a strength in the diversity, and they replanted trees, obviously, but they were not all the same species on the same side of the street or across from each other. And it looks different, but, there's a greater strength. I look out into a woods. There's many different varieties of trees.
Yes.
But that together, that diversity has a strength and it has a beauty that isn't there when you have all the same. And I take that into how I understand faith, how I understand people as well.
I love that. I can't, I'm a Saskatchewan farm kid, and I can't help but also think of dog breeds, like the purebreds simply don't live as long. They're fraught with all sorts of challenges and difficulties and all the rest of it. And yet, out around homes, like there'd be a mutt that seems to live longer than human beings. And I mean, it sounds like a strange thing, but again, there is strength in the diversity of the DNA and all of those pieces. So I love that metaphor. That's powerful. So tell us about the mini course that you've created, and perhaps we could just step back from that a little bit before we dive into that, which is faith leaders today have a difficult job, and I know that you're dedicated to serving them, and that your course will help with that. What do you see as the biggest issues that faith leaders are facing today? Because things are changing incredibly quickly.
Yes, with the current COVID and the physical distancing that's going on, everybody's having to rethink how we do ministry. There's the in-person things aren't happening for most congregations. And how do you keep that personal contact? How do you do worship when you're used to doing it together? For those of us who celebrate Holy Communion, how do you do that? Or do you do it? There's so many different questions about that. People are using social media and live stream and all of those kinds of things, but it's not the same. And so what does that mean for ministry? How do we address the social issues, the huge ones that are there in our world today, in responsible ways? And how do we survive when people aren't coming to worship and the dollars aren't necessarily coming in as much?
Yes.
So there's a whole bunch of issues going on, and part of it's communication, part of it's sharing love, and along the way, yeah.
And I do think that, I mean, we can go into a deep philosophical conversation, but I do think that the simultaneous separation from our day-to-day lives and our exposure and connection with other human beings, sometimes aggravated / magnified by being stuck in our houses with the people that sometimes we're sitting on top of one another. That's a whole unique, interesting paradox and contradiction that I know is landing in the laps of many faith leaders. So I have the link for your program here, but what I don't have actually is the actual name of it. What is the name?
Well, the name is a long one in that link, but it's 7 alligators that can ruin your day and what to do about them. It's based on, I'm also a Fascinate certified advisor. So it's based on the work of Sally Hogshead and the How to Fascinate material. And what happens when a gift we have, a strength we have, when we go overboard on that. And when that happens, we become a little bit like an alligator sometimes, kind of snapping and biting at other people. And how do we recognize what variety of alligator you might say somebody is? And then what are some good tips to work with somebody so that maybe they aren't as much like that? And and I've given some kind of fun names to each of them, but realize that as you go through that each alligator can be either male or female. And so like the one that's part of the cover there, excuse me, is What's Next Wally. And so it could be What's Next Wanda. So
I love that. Different is better than... Love her one-liner. Actually, April, I love this as well. Love her one-liner. Different is better than better.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yes,
that.
It is. That is
Perfect.
true. One of Sally's good comments.
Yes. She's an incredibly sharp woman. I had the privilege of seeing her speak in Calgary. Goodness, it's got to be 10 years ago. Mind you, I live in a time warp, so that probably means it was 15, but who knows? But I do think she's brilliant. So who should download the free gift, and if they navigate their way through the alligators, what will shift for them in terms of what they're coping with, what they're facing today, all of those pieces?
Well, actually, the mini course is something anybody can use. Okay. You don't have to be a faith leader or anything like that. But the desire with this is that if you take a look at these alligators, number one, identify which one you are most likely to be. And what happens when you get to be like that, one or two that you are most likely to be, and look at some of those tips and think of how you can then pull yourself back from when you get into alligator mode. And second, it's a way not of putting somebody else in a category, but taking a look at other people's behaviors and recognizing that there is a gift that each person has for each of these alligators, and that gift is inside of that person. And so by using some of these tips, it's a way to help draw that gift back out instead of having them being overboard in whatever they're doing and whatever the reason might be at that. But take a look at some of the reasons why they're behaving that way and responding that way, and then how to, in loving, caring ways, try to pull them back from being in that mode a little bit and respond in ways that aren't going to aggravate the situation any further.
Awesome. Okay, I'm just making sure we get all of the links and comments in the right spot here. And then I want to just say to everyone, here's the reality, is that we require support in much more significant ways in the midst of this COVID thing. In fact, I was just having conversations this morning. Just get that back to you and I. Here we go. I was just having a conversation this morning with a couple of people in the US who, merely weeks ago was like, oh, thank goodness we're coming to an end with this. It's going to be great and all the rest of it. And then, and it's like, it might be a little early for that. But with some of the clampdowns and some of the most challenging results of new cases and all the rest of it, it's like, this is not a short-term thing. And the truth of the matter is, I believe that we should all be preparing for a much longer haul than anybody thinks. That means engaging support in every way, shape, or form possible. For many people, that is about recommitting and resparking their faith practice. For many people, it is about building that community around them in new ways that we have never done before. And what I know to be true about you, Kathleen, is that you foster love, care, connection, and support everywhere you go. So if any of those things are interesting to you, for goodness sakes, I would love for you to download I guess it's not download, it's a mini course. So I'd love for you to sign up for Kathleen's mini course, because I think it's going to do good work at a time where it is just so needed. Yeah. Any last minute thoughts to put a pin in this and to encourage people to take advantage of this tremendous offering you have?
Yeah, the course is free right now. It will be, I will be charging something for it somewhere down the road. I'm not sure exactly when right now, but right now it's free for everybody to download and participate in. And the other thing I'll just mention is every week I do a radio show, and it then becomes a podcast, which you can get on most podcast platforms. And it's called Off Flame Ministry, which is off flame as in on fire ministry. And the idea is to be on fire with God's love. I interview all kinds of interesting people. And so we talk about lots of things related to ministry, lots of things just about people and helping us as human beings. And so that's another resource. And I encourage anybody and everybody to take a listen. It's live every Tuesday when we do the show, and then it's up on as a podcast. So that's another resource for people. And with the alligator stuff and the material from Sally Hogshead, there's a lot more depth to it than just this. So if anybody's interested in learning more about that, please reach out and contact me. It can be used with committees, with teams and boards, with your staff as a really powerful tool to promote understanding and communications within and even between couples and families. So it's a really powerful tool for many different things. So
that is awesome. I love that. So grab the freebie. Make sure that you go and check out Kathleen's podcast, A Flame Ministry. I put the name of that in the chat window as well. And Kathleen, I want to thank you for taking time off on, well, I guess maybe it's not time off, but taking time on Friday afternoon to make up for our little bit of entertainment earlier in the week. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you.
It's always wonderful to hang out with you too. I love being a part of this community. Great people all over the place. So
yeah, we are very blessed in that domain. All right. You have a fantastic weekend. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.